Grim picture in the showdown over the debt ceiling about to get a bit more dismal. White House saying it has no plan B in the debt fight, challenging Republicans to allow them to borrow more money or allow the country to default on its loans. $16 trillion in debt, getting higher by the second, folks, on the clock there. Republican Senator Mike Lee has a vote in all this out of Utah today. Sir, good morning to you in Salt Lake City.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming back here. No backup plan, according to the White House. In addition, Treasury Department says there is no plan B. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a problem. Too often in Washington, we're faced between kind of a false choice. We're presented with a choice that says, okay, you either take no cuts at all and raise the debt limit, or you raise the debt limit with the promise of cuts that may never transpire. And that kind of cut simply won't cut it anymore. Hardworking Americans deserve better than this, and all of the programs that they rely on are placed in jeopardy by our reflexively raising the debt limit without putting in place permanent structural spending reform.
What do you think will happen here? Everybody's trying to figure it out. I guess it'll be sometime about mid-February where we start to see, I guess, something develop. What's your best guess?
Well, one of the things that we will see happening is that people on the other side of this, those who want us to just raise the debt limit as if we were voting on a motherhood appreciation resolution, will tell us that if we don't raise it, and if we don't raise it immediately, or if we raise it only on the basis of permanent structural spending reform, that will somehow amount to a default. We've got to remember that this is not true. If we fail to raise the debt limit, that will bring about some problems. It would bring about a significant shortfall in revenue for the government, but that is different than a default. A default is what happens if we don't pay the interest as it accrues on our national debt. That's not going to happen. We have more than enough revenue coming in each month to cover that sum.
The politics of this could be damaging. You know, the White House will blame the Republicans. I don't know if you saw Politico earlier today, but it's suggesting the House Republicans are entertaining the idea to allow default or shutting down the government. What do you think about that?
Well, again, we have to distinguish between default, which is what happens if we don't pay the interest on our national debt as it accrues, and failing to raise the debt limit. The latter simply means that we would have to spend 60 or 70 cents on the dollar of what we're doing right now. Now, again, that could cause some real problems, but that is very different than a default. And we've got to shy away from that kind of hyperbolic language so that we don't confuse the American voters into thinking that we're running into a default when we're not.
I think just talking about this, too, I mean, it invites confusion in itself. And I guess the fear from the Republican side is not to take the brunt of the blame here. If the story is accurate that half of the members in the Republican House are willing to prepare to allow default, according to this report. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what's being printed. But how do you make sure that you get the right answer so that Republicans don't take the fall?
Well, I think the way we get there is to come up with a real meaningful alternative, something like the cut, cap, and balance approach that I introduced in the Senate in the summer of 2011. And what that means is that we say, okay, look, we acknowledge the need to raise the debt limit, but we're not going to raise it without putting in place some kind of permanent structural spending reform. Because these simple cuts, these cuts that promise to transpire but never in fact do, are not going to do the job anymore. And we're going to face another credit rating downgrade, I fear, if we just raise it reflexively again without changing the way that Washington spends money and, more importantly, the way Washington borrows money.
Have you followed what's going on in California and the Governor Jerry Brown? They raised a lot of taxes out there, but now a lot of stories are being written in California about how they're moving from deep in the red into the black, and it's come at a very high price for a lot of people in California. Is it likely that Democrats start to sell that story to convince people that spending is not the way, spending cuts are not the way to go, but raising more revenue, more taxes is?
Oh, look, I'm certain that that's coming. There is no question in my mind that that's coming. But I can also assure you, Bill, that what's coming from the other side is that in the long run, that hurts economic growth. In the long run, that's going to bring about less revenue rather than more. Because what you're doing there is you're taking money away from job creators. Ultimately, you're going to be killing jobs. That's going to bring about less revenue, and everyone hurts as a result of that.
Yeah.
It's not just those at the top end of the economic scale. It's those along every end of the spectrum, and especially those who are hardworking Americans living paycheck to paycheck. That's who those tax increases really hurt. and in the end, the government loses as well.
Senator, thank you for your time, because as we're asking